Let's jump right into this explainer because today we're exploring a really fascinating paradox of young adulthood. We live in a society that just obsesses over autonomy, right? We're constantly told that true maturity means standing on your own 2 feet, never needing a handout, basically having it all completely together. But what happens when that drive for self reliance goes just a bit too far? What happens when independence stops being this great strength and actually morphs into an exhausting, isolating emotional trap? It's a pretty heavy question, isn't it? Like, is your fierce self reliance actually less of a natural personality trait and more of a hard learned survival mechanism? We so often wear our ability to literally do it all ourselves as a badge of honor, but sometimes that armor we're wearing is actually hiding some really deep wounds. So today, we're going to unpack exactly why some people refuse help at absolutely all costs, and how this extreme independence might be masking something much, much deeper. Do any of these visible symptoms hit a little too close to home? Maybe you're that person who absolutely insists on carrying like 15 heavy grocery bags in one single trip just so you don't have to ask your partner for help. People dealing with hyperindependence are chronic overcommitters. I mean, they will take on completely unmanageable workloads because they flat out refuse to delegate a single task. In close relationships, they're super guarded, extremely secretive actually, because they're terrified that personal information might be used against them. There's this deep mistrust of others. And honestly, what's really telling is an intense dislike of neediness. They don't just avoid relying on people, they often actually resent anyone who depends on them, kind of viewing it as a major weakness. All of this leads us to a really poignant term for this exhausting way of living: emotional exile. Now, you aren't isolated by actual physical distance here, you're isolated by these completely invisible emotional walls. It's navigating life showcasing this perfect facade of self-sufficiency. Everyone around you thinks you have it all completely under control. But right beneath the surface, you are grappling with massive relational obstacles and an absolute downright refusal to be vulnerable. You're basically exiled from genuine human connection, entirely by your own design. And that whole dynamic is exactly what some fascinating recent psychological research has set out to understand. We are pulling today's core insights from a 2025 study published in the International Journal of Interdisciplinary Approaches in Psychology. The researchers here decided they wanted to rigorously unpack the actual psychological mechanisms beneath this phenomenon of emotional exile, really looking at how it totally intertwines with our attachment styles and, honestly, our absolute deepest insecurities. To ground this psychological theory in reality, the study meticulously collected data from 140 young adults, specifically right in that 18 to 30 age range, which makes total sense because that is that absolutely critical developmental window where we're, solidifying our personal identities and really trying to build intimate relationships. By measuring these participants' levels of independence, their relationship experiences, and their inner shame, the researchers found some truly eye-opening patterns. When we look at the data, it effectively maps out the entire spectrum of independence. Take a look at the lower scores, 0 to 30. This isn't weakness at all. It's what they call relational openness. These folks trust others, they seek support, and they're totally comfortable with healthy independence. Then that middle group, 31 to 60, they're ambivalent, basically torn between wanting closeness and wanting total autonomy. But check out those high scores, the 61s and up. The study labels this protective self-reliance. They aren't just independent. They actively avoid help. They mistrust others, and they heavily suppress their own needs just to shield themselves. Section 1. Just below the surface. The trauma catalyst. We've seen what hyperindependence looks like on the outside, but why on earth would someone adopt such an extreme, punishing form of self-reliance? Well, when we reframe this behavior empathetically, we see it's actually a brilliant, albeit totally outdated, coping strategy. For a lot of folks, this stems from past neglect by caregivers, where their physical or emotional needs were just consistently unmet. Think about it. As a child, if you learn that trusting others is dangerous, you're going to build a worldview where you can literally only rely on yourself. Seeking help triggers these profound feelings of being undeserving of social support or feeling super vulnerable to betrayal. So hyperindependence basically becomes this incredibly robust mechanism to regain control in a world that at one point felt incredibly chaotic and unsafe. Moving into Section 2, the deep water, mechanics of attachment. To really grasp why these emotional walls are so incredibly thick, we have to look at John Bowlby's attachment theory. There's a stark contrast here between a healthy, secure attachment and an avoidant attachment. Secure individuals, they can easily balance intimacy and autonomy. They have the ability to request support when they need it, which is that healthy interdependence we talked about. Avoidant individuals, on the other hand, place a massively high value on independence. They silently inhibit their emotional needs and basically withdraw completely whenever they're under stress. They suppress their needs just to feel safe. And no surprise here, the study found that hyper-independent individuals strongly align with these exact avoidant traits. And this leads us to one of the most surprising, totally unexpected findings in the entire dataset. The researchers uncovered what we're calling the anxious avoidant paradox. Normally, in psychology, anxiety, which is the fear of abandonment, and avoidance, the fear of closeness, are completely distinct things. But in this specific sample of young adults, they moved almost in perfect tandem. The correlation was 0.956. I mean, that is incredibly high. It means these hyper-independent folks are trapped in a literal paradox. They have this intense, terrifying fear of being abandoned while simultaneously feeling a deep discomfort with letting anyone get close to them. It's wild. Section 3. The ocean floor. Internalized shame. So, what is actually anchoring this massive emotional iceberg? We are plunging to the very bottom here to uncover the core truth of this whole thing. That massive driver, it's internalized shame. Now, we need to be clear, this is vastly different from guilt. Guilt is feeling bad about a specific action you took, right? Internalized shame, though, is this harsh inner critic that convinces you that your entire self is fundamentally defective and unlovable. It's basically taking the external disapproval you might have experienced early in life, say from childhood neglect or emotional invalidation, and fully adopting it as your own inner voice. And the impact of carrying all of this around is just devastating. It creates this continuous, extremely harsh loop of self-hatred. It leads to severe social withdrawal because, well, you're absolutely terrified of judgment. Compliments, praise, completely impossible to accept because they directly clash with your core belief of being unworthy. It literally causes paralysis when it comes to acting freely in your life, and it creates a massive risk for severe burnout and clinical depression. This deep-seated shame just relentlessly undermines a person's self-worth. So the absolutely crucial point here is summarized perfectly in this takeaway directly from the study: independence used as a shield against shame, rejection, or disappointment. Think about that for a second. All that outward resilience, all that stubborn refusal to ask for a hand, it is not an indicator of true strength, not at all. It is a highly defensive posture, meticulously designed to hide perceived flaws so that absolutely nobody can ever get close enough to reject you. The researchers officially identify this as protective self-reliance. And here's the crazy part. When they actually ran the regression analysis, the math totally proved it. Internalized shame was the most significant measurable predictor of this emotional withdrawal. It wasn't just age, it wasn't gender, it wasn't even just their attachment style on its own. No, shame was the single most significant factor driving this extreme, self-isolating brand of independence. So let's begin our ascent from the depths here and put this all together. What you really should take away from this explainer today is that for so many young adults struggling with this, the fierce independence they project to the world is entirely a facade. Outwardly, sure, they look incredibly resilient, super adaptable, and highly capable. But inwardly, they are completely, totally cut off from the vital emotional support they actually desperately need. And if the independence is a facade, then shame is the architect. Those isolating walls of emotional exile we talked about, they didn't just appear out of nowhere overnight. They were quietly and meticulously built over years and years by internalized feelings of inadequacy and by early experiences where being vulnerable just simply wasn't safe. The shame told them they were completely unworthy of help, so they built an impenetrable fortress to make absolutely sure they never had to ask for it. But there is a very hopeful takeaway here, I promise. If trauma and shame built the walls, what tears them down? Vulnerability. Vulnerability is the cure. Now, this doesn't mean just suddenly becoming helpless, not at all. It means embracing true interdependence. It requires the immense, honestly terrifying courage to let your guard down, to allow yourself to actually be seen, to ask for support, and to let yourself be truly known by someone else. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to really reflect on today. Are you ready to end your emotional exile and actually choose true interdependence? It might be time to reevaluate the armor you've been wearing for so long, because true strength isn't about carrying the weight of the entire world entirely on your own shoulders. True profound strength is found in having the incredible courage to need others. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the insight to start building bridges instead of walls.